In this demo, I'll be covering usage of strings and string slices. So here we have a struct called line item. It represents a line item on a receipt. Each line item has a name, which is a string, and a count, which is the number of items purchased for that particular item. I'm going to enter into the main function and create my receipt. I'm going to create a vector using the vec macro. Within the vec macro, I'm going to create my line items. So the first one will be a cereal, and I use the .toOwned function in order to create owned data. For the cereal, we'll have 1, and I'm going to create another line item. This one can be a fruit. I'll use the string from function for this one, and we'll have 3 fruits. So here we can see that the line item takes a string, and to create a string, we can use .toOwned or we can use string from on these string slices. If we were to try to create the line item and not include this part here and just send in a string slice, we would get a compiler error because the line item requires an owned string. And it requires an owned string. That way, when the line item gets deleted, it has permission to drop all the data. Next, I'm just going to iterate through each item using a for loop. So for item in receipt, I'm just going to print out some information about the item. So we'll have the item name, and we'll also print out the count for the item. We can reference the name and the count. So if we were to run this program, we would get the items. Here we have a cereal, and there's only 1, fruit, and we have 3. And that corresponds to our cereal, there's 1, and our fruit, there is 3. I'm now going to create a function that prints out a string slice, and I'm going to use it to print the name of the line item. So I'll name the function print name. It will accept a name, which is a string slice. We don't return anything, so we're just printing information out. And then call the print line macro, and I will supply the name as a debug token. Down here in my loop, I'm going to call that function print name with the item name. And then now the count can just be by itself. Now, if you recall, the structure has a string data type as the name. So this is an owned string. However, this function requires a borrowed string slice because it's borrowed because we see the ampersand. So in order to use this function properly, we can't just send in the item name because that is a string. So instead, we simply need to borrow the name field like that. And so now we're borrowing this field here, the name field. And that is going to create a string slice from this string. Now, if we run the program, everything should work as expected. We have the cereal 1, fruit 3. We'll do a walkthrough. We're creating a receipt, which is a vector. It has 2 line items. The first one is cereal. We use .toOwned to create owned data because we require an owned string. We set the count to 1. We have a second line item. I'm using the string from function on this string slice called fruit because we need an owned string just as before. That's set to 3. We then iterate through each item on the receipt. So for every item that's in the receipt, we're calling the print name function, and we're borrowing the name field. That then comes up here as a string slice. We can see it's borrowed. It then prints it out using the debug token. And it also has a print line on the count field of the line item, which is here. It's just an I32. It then repeats for each item in the lists. We have 2 items, so it'll print 2 times, and then our program will end. This concludes the demo on strings. I'll see you in the next presentation.